Hello and welcome back to Aetheral Space 16.3 to convene. Part 1.
Part 1.
Yeah.
We're back. It's been a minute, guys. Thank you for sticking with it thus far. I think we've gotten to the point. I don't know if I should keep telling people to leave reviews, because I think everyone who can has. So now I'm just going to tell you to tell your friends about Aetheral Space. Get them to read it.
I need those thoughts to go from inside your head into the heads of others, is what it all boils down to.
Yeah. And now as a community, we have to, not dissimilar to a virus, we need to spread. Mutate, even. That's the only way to
And that's why the signals in this video will help.
we put subliminal messaging that will create tumors in your brain to help you influence others to read the series.
They will do other things as well. Don't go near your pets for a little bit.
Yeah, don't use a cell phone, whatever you do.
With our partners at Umbrella, we're taking new steps.
Without further ado, let's get into it. Ruth strode into the cavernous meeting hall, glancing around as Agnes and her entourage moved over to her seat. The room was split into 10 sections, one for each member of the Central Governing Council, with a huge round table in the middle for the council to sit at and discuss matters. As their group walked towards the addressed section, Ruth glanced at their unexpected attaché once more, the widow. To tell the truth, Ruth still wasn't 100% sure what role she played here. The old woman had been Skipper's teacher, sure, and part of that Vantablack squad that worked for Pierrot, but where did Agnes and Adrest come into it? Was it just because the widow originally came from Adrest? Ruth doubted it. She didn't have a head for these things, but this whole thing stank of some kind of conspiracy. She clenched her fists. None of my business, she thought. I'm just sticking with this until I can get what I want. Hey, called out a husky voice from across the room. Hey! Ruth turned to look and saw a gray-skinned young man glaring at her from across the table. That skin and those golden eyes. This guy was from Brainon, then, right? Nebula 6? What? She asked. Nebula 5, right? He said, slowly circling the table as he approached her. You're that asshole's replacement. How's it feel, stealing a man's number and his title? That's fucked. Ruth looked over at Agnes, but if she was bothered by the way this guy was talking about her brother, she didn't show it. She was just sitting down at the table, her aides carefully arranging her diplomatic materials in front of her. Hey, bitch, the man growled as she continued to look away from him. I'm talking to you. Ruth rolled her eyes as she turned back to him. She might not have been able to remember this guy's name, but his attitude was familiar enough. Next time you say something worth listening to, she glared right back, I'll listen. Until then, you're just noise, dickhead. Funnily enough, the man seemed to smirk at that, a certain pep in his step as he retreated back to Brainon's section of the chamber. The representative, a scarred man wrapped tight in a gray cloak, had already taken his seat there. Soldiers in stone armor guarded him on either side, almost comically huge maces slung over their shoulders. Their visors were so thin that it was hard to tell what they were looking at, or if they could even see. But Ruth got the distinct sense they were glaring. Ruth tore her gaze away to stand next to her seated employer, hands clasped professionally, ready to respond to any threats. The Model Nebula. The other members of the council and their entourages entered the room one by one, each time with great aplomb. Miserable Misery Locke and his hulking silent killer, Forgiveness Irons, tiny white eyes stared through Ruth as the murderer stalked past. Boisterous Maximum Gainhill and the cowgirl May Miracles. She offered Ruth a wink as she walked past the addressed section. Ruth quickly looked away. Yulia, If Void, and Luna, the hushed representatives of Abra Facade, made their way to their seats silently. Ruth shuddered as she watched Luna. Something about that girl just wasn't right. Elderly Albert Reyes, the esteemed statesman of the Lesser Chain, made his way to a seat with a cane of apex wood. His new nebula, a fully armored knight, complete with sword and shield, stared at Ruth for a moment before moving on. It only made sense. Clearly they were both armor users. Nebula 3, Tomfoolery, carried his diminutive employer upon his shoulder. The green-skinned woman looked around the room with a bright smile as her nebula carried her to her chair. She seemed much happier than anyone else here. Was that wise? The Oba of Ngansi strode solemnly to his place, followed by Jamilu Aguta and a procession of other Ngansi warriors. Even among their ranks, though, Nebula 2 exuded a certain pressure. But that wasn't so different from the presence of the Oba himself. Ruth got the feeling this head of state could actually be a match for his nebula in combat, if it came down to it. And then, Sitting at the head of the table, or at least the spot with the window directly behind, was Lord Mayor Shen Zhurong of Jinhua. Ruth had seen some members of the Scarlet Parade acting as additional security on her way in, their faces wrapped tight in crimson bandages. Inside this room, though, the Lord Mayor required only one form of security. There should be a one after only, I believe. Nebula
Yes.
1. He stood before the window, arms crossed, silhouetted against the shining cityscape of serendipity. The Nebula of Braynon scowled at him, muttering under his breath. "Nebula 1, my ass," he growled. "Yeah, but it's easy when you can just buy some armor to get the job done." If Nebula 1 heard his complaints, though, he didn't react to them at all. He just stayed there, arms still crossed, ready and waiting for anything. As far as bodyguards went, he seemed pretty locked in. "I've received word that the representative of the Pandershi Foundation will be running late," Zhurong said, straightening the papers before him. "As such, I propose we begin our discussions now, and fill the representative in if and when he arrives. Are there any objections?" "Is this a joke?" The Landgrave of Braynon nearly spat, his scarred face twisted in disgust. "The man calls us across the galaxy, and fails to show up himself. He's mocking us." "Perhaps," Albert Reyes, Prime Minister of the Lesser Chain, spoke up with a voice trembling with age. "But the Pandershi Foundation provides our technological edge over the supremacy. In exchange for that, I, for one, am willing to accept some level of mockery." The Landgrave raised a patchy eyebrow. "The regent of a dying nation may be willing to accept a clown dancing on his grave, but Braynon will not. I will require a full apology from Pandershi before I acknowledge him again as a member of this council." "Noted," Zhurong said. He'd naturally taken control of the meeting. "We'll pursue this request with the representative upon his arrival." There was a quiet, very quiet, croaking noise from the rake-bone section of the table. It took Ruth a second to realize that this was Misery Locke, trying to clear his throat to gain attention while also trying to make it as quiet as possible. All the same, in the near-silent room, eyes turned to regard him. "The elders don't want to talk about Pandershi," he said in a trembling voice. "They want to talk about Utra V, or Utra 5, even." Zephyr Pandershi adjusted the filter on his rebreather as he marched down into the depths of the Seed of Man. His amber eyes narrowed at the dirty hallways and flickering lights. Honestly, this kind of disrepair spoke ill of the UAP as a whole. These bottommost levels, just below the building's cold harvest array, were mostly used for storage. But still, there was a reason Zephyr couldn't bring himself to breathe in the filthy air down here, even with his obvious physical advantages. But still, the dire state of this part of the complex made hiding things here very easy. Of course, easy was relative. Bribing maintenance staff, reprogramming the regular security sweeps, reallocating storage logs. For anyone that was not Zephyr Pandershi, it surely would have been quite the task. For him, though, it barely qualified as a chore. He stopped in front of the door. Before the events of the day truly kicked off, he needed to make sure that this was in place. Sending one of his subordinates wouldn't do either. You hardly used a fingernail to look at something, did you? No. You used your eyes, your mind, your master mind. So it went. "Voice activation," Zephyr said calmly. "Oh, jolly good fellow." Red lights ran across the frame of the door. The time lag was nigh unacceptable, before finally switching to green as the voice print was accepted. Another reason Zephyr had to do this in person. The doors slid open, and Zephyr stepped forward into the huge chamber. His amber eyes narrowed as he regarded his prize. It had been waiting for him. The automatic floated ominously over the ground, halfway between the floor and the ceiling. Held aloft by no visible means, not even the telltale ripple of a repulsor. It was shaped like a stark white bead, around the size of a car, its tail curling into a tip blinking with silver light. Apart from that, it was featureless, perfect in its simplicity and grace. And all around there was communication. Golden equations carved themselves into the air. Words and phrases encrypted and ciphered flickered in and out of view, made meaningless by speed and a rearrangement. Omnilingual whispering hissed through the air.
That's probably,
bouncing off the walls as it replied to itself, increasing in complexity with each rebound. Poems and songs and instructions and demands pouring out through every available avenue. This wonder of the galaxy had taken a lot for Zephyr to acquire. The lovers, or at least half of it, one of the Arcana automatics that had terrorized the galaxy during their rampage after the Thousand Revolutions. While it wasn't the deadliest of those mechanical legions, it certainly was one of the most fascinating. The function of the lovers had been communication, connecting all of the Arcana automatics throughout the galaxy to coordinate their violent assaults. In order to avoid these communications being blocked, Madatela had given this dual automatic the ability to push its own systems through evolution. As such, its capacity for communication had grown and grown and grown until now, when either after the network itself was destroyed, the lover's ability to communicate had progressed past the point of comprehension. Even Zephyr Pandershi didn't understand how it worked at this point, and if he didn't, then nobody did. Still, even if he didn't understand it, that didn't mean he couldn't use it. Words weren't the only things that could be communicated, after all. Utra 5, Zhurong said gravely. Yes, we received the news last night. There's been an attack. The entire colony wiped out, men, women, and children. Noise rippled through the room at the declaration. Max Gainhill of the Miraze estate looked down at his papers, shuffling through them with his meaty hand. He scowled. Why am I only hearing about this now? He grumbled. Zhurong looked at him. As I said, we received this news only last night. It's all but breaking. No bullshit. Oh, this is him still. No bullshit, Gainhill glared back. Feels to me like you're trying to pull off an ambush here, Zhurong. They should have been distributed before we even stepped into the building. What's your angle? My team's been working on a response, Zhurong replied smoothly. I don't agree with your appraisal of the situation, but I'd like to submit it for the approval of this council. Pardon, Albert Reyes of the Lesser Chain raised a hand. Before we look at action plans or any of that nonsense, I think this council should hear me about what exactly has happened on this Utra 5? The specifics, I mean. Of course, Zhurong nodded. It's one of our border colonies, the Far Border, established as part of the treaty following the Kingdom Moon incident. It was home to only around 500 colonists, but symbolically its value is immense. I believe it was referred to as a Lantern of Peace at the time. The lantern is snuffed out, whispered Yulia if void of Aberfasad, and the peace leaves no shadow. Quite. At first we believed this to be the work of pirates or bandits that operate on the border. There's no shortage of suspicious groups in the region, but upon further investigation, well... Words weren't necessary. His face still grave, Zhurong reached across the table and flicked a switch, activating the holographic display. Pale light flowed over the faces of those gathered as they looked up at the image. Zhurong's severity was mirrored on each and every one of them. The image said enough. The central square of Yurta 5, already littered with bloody bodies, with a group of soldiers firing somewhere out of view. What they were shooting at wasn't the problem, though. The problem was who they were. Supremacy soldiers. The one wearing the mask, the Landgrave of Brandon grunted. The one in front. Do we know who? The golden principality behind the Oba's head rotated rapidly, twinkling with light as he drew on its information. I know of them, he nodded sagely. The Crown. They used to be part of the Supremacy's military, too, before signing up for the Dawn contest. Seems they managed to avoid the banquet and join back up. An authorized attack, then. The Landgrave turned to his fellow military leaders. The new Supreme. Max Gainhill snorted angry air from his nose. It would make sense. He ain't exactly the most popular a new Supreme's ever been. Nothing brings that bunch together like a good old war. Our analysis agrees, Zhurong said, and that's why, by the end of the day, before we can proceed with any action plan at all, we need to agree. He leaned forward and spoke with the grim voice of history. Are we going to war with the Supremacy? Bum bum bum.
Bum, bum, bum.
There's no way Dragon ordered this, though, whatever it is. This was definitely Darkstar. Alright, let's see.
It was Sans. That was rude. Something
Wow.
even.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Alright.
I actually did the original, but they scammed me out of the credit. They stole it from me. That's why I've always hated Undertale. I never told
I'm
you.
sorry that happened to you. But thankfully, Delta exists, so you can just play that instead.
I suppose I can.
Yeah. It's a new game. It's a new day.
How do I play it?
Can I say something?
You can say anything.
And I hope this isn't a supremely hot take. Undertale is a great game. I think it's genuinely fantastic. But it's like a game I think you can only really play once or twice. Once you like got the endings and get the lore, it is like kind of a, I don't know. The gameplay I think relies a lot.
The story is the point, yeah.
Yeah. Like the gameplay's not bad or anything, but it definitely relies on like being unique. Like, oh, this is a cool way to do battles, but I don't think it's like super fun on its own. It kind of gets old, like doing the same like mercy inputs over and over, or like doing the same hits. But I still think it's a good game. Anyway, probably a lukewarm take. We have Aether questions. Let me see where we left off, though. It's been a while. Lan asks, where did the Sed get their subjects from?
From the dispossessed, the homeless, the people who would not be missed.
Damn. I ask, we know Henry and Cadman both didn't care much about administration, and Damon wanted to dismantle things but was more of a revolutionary. Has there ever been a Supreme or Supremes that cared very much about policy and administration, like they did their shonen rise to the top and then just became an admin? Bonus points if you name someone aside from Renee the Raven.
So, apart from Renee Raven, her mother, Sordri the Heart, was sort of that. She was originally from Abraphasad. She went over to Supremacy and killed the fucking Supreme and became Supreme. And from there, she was like, she was very much like a perfectionist in terms of this government is mine, I'm going to make it work perfectly.
And that was Renee's mom?
Yeah.
I thought Renee was like the third Supreme.
No.
Oh. What number Supreme was she?
She was like in the middle somewhere. I've not decided firmly yet.
Okay. How much of a gap was there between her mom's rule and hers?
Well, she was immediately after.
Oh, okay.
She was the Supreme Elisa, where...
Yeah, so she got a freebie.
Well, no, she did have to kill the Supreme.
Oh. Well, like... Did her mom let her?
Oh, yeah, she was, like, basically, like, raised and groomed for it. So it was fucked.
Damn.
Like, mentally broken.
Rurum asks, who are some famous previous nebulas? And is there a one nebula per council member limit, or could some theoretically have two?
No, you can only have one nebula.
Who's some famous past one?
Well, we had Ludwig. We know him. He was Lesser Chain. He was a previous nebula one.
Yeah, he had the puppets.
Yeah, he was pretty up there in the power scales.
What's the current? What was the current number one's power again? I forgot.
We don't know.
Oh. Okay. Do we know any other past ones that were famous?
Of course we do. We know that the Marae State, they hire mercenaries and they go through them fairly quickly. They're like on contracts. So there's been... of course I remember the one because I named them all in 2 chapters. I named a couple 2 chapters ago, so of course I remember them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's all sorts of people in this world.
Fascinating. Weiser asks, have there always been 10 seats on the Unified Council? If the numbers changed over the years, what are the extremes? Okay, so it's always
10, but who those 10 are do change depending on who are voted in by the sectors, basically.
Okay.
Like how before there was Pandershi, there was Monaderi.
Alright, and then let's... Leaving off here. Alright, I think that's a good spot to leave it at. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time.
Thank you so much. You stopped me from doing it. I shouldn't say that.
Jesus. Wow.